So on this video right here, I wanted to go over how you'd be able to find a key to pretty much any song by ear. My name's Drop. I'm from letitdropmusic.com, producerpolish.com. So just to start off, we need to know the names of the actual notes that are on the keyboard. So they range from the letter A through G, so it's fairly straightforward. Now, one good technique that I like to use, or that I was taught, was that you look at your black keys and you see you have groups of 2 of them and you have groups of 3 of them. So you pick out the group of 2 black keys, and then right to the left of those 2 black keys, that's going to be C. So find your 2 black keys that are in a group together, right to the left of those, that's your C note. And once you know one note, you pretty much know all the others. So if you go up on the white keys, we have D, E, F, G, A, B, and then C. So you have all the letters there. Now, besides just knowing the names of the notes, the next kind of big foundation thing that you need to know is what's a whole step and what's a half a step. So whole steps, half steps, whole steps. They're pretty much the foundation of your scales and of these notes. So if we start on C here, so we have our 2 black keys right to the left, that's our C. If we go up 1/2 a step, that's going to bring us into this black key. Now these black keys, they're normally called either a sharp or a flat, some type of name. So right next, if you pick out a black key, the key either right to the left or right to the right will determine if it's a sharp or a flat. So in this case, we're going up 1/2 a step, so the very next key, that is C sharp. So because we're going up 1/2 a step and because we're landing on that black key, C sharp. If we say we're on C sharp and we go up 1/2 a step, that'll land us on D. So it's always the very next key that you could select. You're never going to skip a key if you're only going 1/2 a step. So now that we're on D here, we can go down 1/2 a step, and that would be D flat. So if you go down 1/2 a step and you land on a black key, it's going to be whatever the key that you were just on. In this case it was D, and then it would be flatted, so D flat. Now don't get too caught up in the sharps and flats. The main thing is, as long as you know what the names of the keys are, you don't really have to describe exactly what a sharp or a flat is and know those definitions, but all you need to know is C, C sharp, D, D sharp because we're going up another step, and then we have E, and then F, F sharp, G, G sharp, and so on. And I'm just trying to keep this as simple as possible because a half step isn't always going to mean a sharp or a flat, and just because you go down 1/2 a step, like if you look here at F, if you go down 1/2 a step, it's not, you could still call it F flat, but really it's E. And just to keep things simple, we're going to keep calling it E. We're not going to call it F flat. Same thing with C. If you go down 1/2 a step, technically, yeah, that's C flat. And sometimes, if you're a musician, you might see it written that way, but for our intent, for our purposes, we don't really need to get that technical. So we know all the names of the keys now, and we also know what a 1/2 a step is. So we need to go one more 1/2 a step, so 2 half steps, and that would bring us to whole steps. So if we start here on C and we go 2 half steps, that would be a whole step, and that would bring us to D. You can also think of it as skipping one key in between. So a whole step, we go to the very next key, and then we skip it, and that's a whole step. So a whole step has one key in between. Half a step is the very next key, no matter if it's sharp or flat or anything like that. So now we know our note names, we know what a half step and a whole step is. So that brings us to our first scale, which is going to be the major scale. And instead of getting right into showing you on the keyboard, there's actually a pattern that you want to memorize, and that pattern is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So 2 W's and a H, and then 3 W's and a H. That's a good way that I like to keep track of it. Also too, if you look at the keyboard, you have 2 black keys and then 3 black keys, so it's kind of a good way to memorize it. 2 and then a half step, 3 whole steps, and then a half step. So you kind of see that pattern right on the keyboard already. 2 and then 3, 2 and then 3. So 2 whole steps and a half step, 3 whole steps and a half step. Now let's go ahead on the keyboard, and if we select C, so we found our 2 black keys that are grouped together, right to the left of them, that's C, and we're going to go a whole step. So a whole step, we're going to skip a key, another whole step, skip a key, and then this time half a step, which is the very next key, and then 3 more W's and a H, so another whole step, skip a key, another whole step, we're skipping a key, another whole step, we're skipping another key, and then we have finally the half a step, and that's the major scale. So if you just know that one pattern, 2 W's and a H, 3 W's and a H, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, now you know all your major scales. So no matter what note you choose, if you know that pattern, so this is B, let's go ahead and whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and then half step. So it's that simple. So you know your note names now, you know what your half steps and whole steps are, you have your major scales pretty much down. Now you need to go ahead and take your time and just learn those major scales. I mean, it might take you about a week. It took me about a week. It might take you a lot quicker, maybe a few hours, and just know every key, there's 12 keys between here and the very last one being B before they repeat. So you want to take each one of those keys and use that pattern, the 2 W's and a H, 3 W's and a H, use that pattern and find out every single major scale. And that's the biggest thing that you can do to start finding out keys of songs by ear. Once you know your major scales, then you can go ahead and start to look at minor scales as well. And all your minor scales, they use the same notes as your major scale, so it's really, really simple. Once you know your minor, you pretty much know your major. Now, a lot of times you'll find that people will refer to scale notes as numbers, and it's a good way to start thinking of them as well. So if we have our major scale, let's just do C. So the first note would be C, that would be 1. Second note, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and then back to 1. So there's 7 notes in a major scale, and you want it in a minor scale as well, and you want to use those numbers to your advantage, because if you say the 6th note of a scale, it's gonna, no matter what key it actually is, what the note name is, if it's a C major, D major, E major, it's still gonna be the rule is still gonna be the same. So the reason why we want to know those numbers is because when you're dealing with minors, if you go to the 6th note of the scale, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that is going to be what's called a relative minor. So a relative minor uses the same exact notes as a major scale, except they just start on whatever the key is called. So in this particular case, we landed on A from C major. That's the 6th note in the C major scale. So it's A minor, and that's going to use all the same notes all the way up to A as a C major scale. So that's a good thing to know. Now, to take it a step further, now that you know where the 6 is, you also want to know where the 3 and the 7 is. And once you know where the 3, the 6, and the 7 is, you can take any major scale that you know and turn it into a minor scale. So if we start with the C major, we're going to take the 3rd note, the 6th note, and the 7th note, and we're going to bring it down 1/2 a step, or we're going to flat them. So 1/2 step down for 3, 6, and 7. So 1, 2, 3, it's going to go down 1/2 a step. 4, 5, 6 is going down 1/2 a step. 7 is going down 1/2 a step. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1. So all of a sudden now, if you can remember your major scale pattern, 2 whole steps and a half step, 3 whole steps and a half step, and then if you can combine that with knowing that the 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th note of that scale needs to be flatted to find your major, to find your minor, then all of a sudden you know all your major and all your minor keys. So it seems a lot more complicated than it is, but everything is repeating and everything is related. So once you know that one scale, that 2 whole steps and a half step, 3 whole steps and a half step, And if you know that you need to flat your 3, 6, and 7, you now know all your major and minor scales. It's pretty cool. And then also you know your relatives. And that's the relatives. Knowing your relatives is really important, especially when you're using something like an auto-tune, because you want to make sure that even though the notes are the same, they can sound correct. You can put a major scale in place of its relative minor in auto-tune, and it would still probably work. But if you switch it to that minor, you'll find that it just sits there a lot better, because it's using the proper notes in their proper order of importance. So now that we know our scales, we know our names, you find the 2 black keys right to the left, that's C. That can help you find the rest of your names, your half steps and your whole steps. Half steps is the very next key, whole step you skip 1 key. And then we also know our pattern, 2 W's and an H, 3 W's and an H. We now know that if we take our 3rd, 6th, and 7th note and move them down 1/2 a step, that's going to create our minor scale. So we know our majors and minors, and you really just want to take some time out, a few hours, and I bet you'd have them all memorized. If you just have all your major keys memorized, that's how I started for the longest time, and I would just know, if I know my major key, 3, 6, and 7, flat those, and I'm all set. Now, there's a lot of other minor keys, there's a lot of other keys that you can go ahead and learn, but I'm just trying to keep this as simple as possible, and I guarantee that if you know these scales, the major scales, and know how to get to your minors, you should have no problem finding the key of any song by ear. So I have a couple of tracks here. Let's go ahead and play one, and we're going to try to find the key.
You're now listening to Let It Drop Music.
So you see me kind of poking around on all those notes there. Some of them sounded really bad, but some of them sounded really good too. So I know that the bad ones, like specifically I know that one sounded really bad, these 2 sounded really bad, there was a couple others too, but I know right away that any scales, whether they're major, minor, whatever, if they use any of those notes that I know are bad, I'm going to totally rule them out. So automatically, once you start listening to a song, if you were to press all 12 keys, you should easily be able to find at least 3 or 4 notes that just don't work. They just sound nasty and ugly when they're played over the instrumental or over the song. So now that we ruled a couple keys out, I'm going to keep poking around, and I'm going to go ahead and try to find a key that I really like a note that I really like, that I think sounds really good, and I'm going to go ahead and try to play a major scale from it.
You're now
I'm
listening
going to go ahead
to
and
Let It
fast
Drop
forward the
Music.
song a little bit too. So if you just look at that one was really close. I thought I might have had it for a second there, until I came to that very, very last note. And then, you know, even though 6 out of the 7 of the notes sounded good, I know that that one, it really wasn't sounding too good. So if we just move that one down, so I had all these different notes. So I started on C that time, went all the way up. And then if I just change that note to whatever this one, because it's pretty much the only one that's left. And the way that I ruled that out is because I already used C all the way up. So I know that I can't move this up a note because I already used it, so I have to move it down a half a step. Because if I would have moved it up a half a step, it would have been the note that I already have selected when I was down here on C. So we're pretty close. We know that it's pretty much all these white keys plus this black key. Now we just need to find out, well, what key is this? So we know that it's not C, so let's go ahead to the next note, D. Now, I know from experience, because I memorized the scales, that that's D minor. Now, that necessarily isn't the key that this song is, but I also know that the relative major to D minor is F major. So, you know, if you didn't have that experience, you could have just said, okay, D works, let me go ahead to the next note. E, let me try that one, the major scale. You would have found that there was some notes that didn't work. Let me go to F, and then you would have found, wow, F really works. So let's go ahead and hear F major over this. So just by playing the scale, it almost sounds like you're starting to create a melody. That's when you can know that yeah, you found the right key. So you can just select any note from that scale, and it's going to sound like it was meant to be there. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out about this track is even though I started off with that minor scale, I knew that this is more of a happier, brighter song. I knew it probably wasn't going to be a minor scale. You know, if you listen to it, doesn't really sound like it has that dark or serious or sad type of vibe. It sounds a little happier. So, you know, that's another way. Minor scales, minor keys, they're usually, you know, darker, sadder, more serious, all of the above that you can think of that you know, go along with that. And the major keys are usually a little more brighter, a little happier, things like that. So use your ears. That's the most important thing. Well, I'm trying to show you how to use your ear to find the key while you use the keyboard. Alright, so I got the next track lined up here, and let's go ahead and take a listen. We'll do the same thing, try to find the key of this one.
You're now listening to Let It Drop Music.
Alright, so right away we pretty much see that most of the black keys are working. I already kind of ruled out some of the white keys. They really weren't sounding good. So I'm going to go ahead and concentrate on the black keys and see what major key maybe I know, or maybe even what minor key I know that this song would actually be using. So let's take a listen.
You're now listening to Let It Drop Music.
Alright, so I've kind of picked out like my favorite black key so far, and this one, you know, really resonates with the track for me. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'll try the major scale, but even if I do the major scale, I know that it's just by knowing the pattern here off the top of my head, it's gonna have a lot of white keys in it, and I know that this song has more black keys, specifically this one, so I'm probably gonna have to do the minor version of this. So I'll go ahead and I'll use the 3, 6, and 7, flat those, and I'll see what the minor scale comes out to. So whole step, that's 3, so 1, 2, 3, down a half a step, 4, 5, 6, down a half a step, 7, down a half a step, and then we're back at 1 here. So that was the major scale there, turned into the minor. That's kind of like what my thought process would be to turn that major scale into the minor. So I'm pretty sure, because I've already ruled out most of the notes, that this is the scale.
You're now listening to Let It Drop Music.
And yeah, all the notes work, so I know that that's my scale, which is going to be E, and then we go down half a step, which is this black note would be E flat. So E flat minor would be with this instrumental, what the key is for it. Use all this, you know, it's going to take some time. You're not going to be able to just watch this video and be able to pick up keys by ear, but what you can do is start with those note names, start by learning what each of these keys are called, and then go ahead and memorize those whole steps and half steps, and that pattern of 2 whole steps and a half step, 3 whole steps and a half step. Memorize those things, go ahead and actually play out every single major scale and memorize each major scale using that 2 W's and an H, 3 W's and an H pattern, and then go ahead and make those minors from those majors by flatting the 3, the 6, and the 7. Rule out the notes that don't work when you're listening to the music, and then concentrate on using those patterns and using those majors and minor scales. The more you memorize them, the easier it'll be and the quicker it'll be to find the scale. So I really hope this helped. Definitely let me know if it helps you out. If you have any questions, leave me a comment. Definitely like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Later.